little better?
Yes.
Okay, great. Cool. Too loud or okay? Thumbs up. I'm getting thumbs ups.
Sweet.
I think we're in the sweet spot.
All right, cool.
All right.
Hey guys, I'm Charles, and this is.
I'm Bill. Nice to meet you guys on the little screen, the little squares. Fantastic. Super exciting. Go ahead.
We're here to start you off on the right foot with writing for handbells, and I'm going to be leading the workshop today. I'm very excited to teach this with you. You should have gotten a Dropbox link with several scores, some recordings, and then I just uploaded an outline of today's workshop in there if you'd like to follow along. And then there's also some notation resources, and one in particular I'm going to be referencing is this big long infographic that has maybe 20 different advanced techniques on it. So the way the class is or workshop is going to go today is I'm going to go through the outline, and Bill is going to run the Zoom side of things. Thanks, Bill.
Yep. Great. Matthew Mason's here.
Matthew Mason, right. All right. Yeah, so I'm going to go through the workshop outline from the beginning to the end if you want to follow along. Hey, Matt, thanks for joining us. If you have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat, and Bill, who's behind the computer now, might stop me and ask me to answer one of those questions, and I'd be happy to do that. But otherwise, I'm going to go through this workshop outline. Again, it's in the Dropbox, and you're welcome to follow along. I think that's Alicia. Okay, cool. Hey, come on in. You can sit there if you'd like.
We just started.
All right, sweet. So starting at the beginning of the workshop outline, the ensemble overview, handbells are laid out in octaves, and the first weird thing is that middle C is actually C5 in handbells. That's just the numbering, whereas on the piano it's C4, on handbells it's C5, and that doesn't mean it's a transposing instrument. It's still written pitch equals sounding pitch. So the goal for this project is to write for the full 5-octave ensemble. You can see some of the bells over here represent the lower octave. I've got some higher octaves here, and then the very highest note, C8, which is right here. Okay, and I'll go through all the bells today. So then going through basic characteristics, starting with ringing, which is just your standard bell technique. The bass bells have a fairly soft sound with a lot of reverb. Here's the lowest bell, which is C3. This is the lowest one we can write for. And you can see I did that with 2 hands, and some players could do it with 1 hand. But if you're in a rush, you might have to use only 1 hand and ring it a little bit and put it down. Okay, so that's the lowest of the bass bells, and then this is the highest of the bass bells, which is B3. And then the rest of them are here on the table. In the middle of the bells is called the battery, which is kind of the harmonic middle of the bell choir. The bass is the bass. This is C4, which is bass clef C, not middle C again. And these could be very overpowering, especially if you're playing them in quick succession. They can really overpower the balance of the choir. Every choir is laid out a little different in the space. Some people put the high bells in front. My preference personally is to put the low bells in front because they just don't carry as well. And the high bells could be like literally in another room and you will hear them. They are just so shrill and piercing. But the battery I usually put in the middle behind the bass so that they don't overpower them. So battery, and then the last is the high bells. They're very strident. They're great for carrying over the choir with a melody. Okay, and that's all the ringing. As far as malleting goes, and these are just 2 basic techniques, ringing and malleting. You'll see them you'll see ringing in every piece. You'll see malleting in most pieces. Malleting on high bells sounds like this. and then here's the highest bell. It fades immediately. Bass bells have the opposite problem, where once you strike them, you almost have to dampen them to get them to stop. That's on a table, and it rings 5-6 seconds. Okay, so sometimes if you want a really short staccato sound in the bass, you have to allow the player to put a palm right there. Okay. And then in the battery, it's just basically splitting the difference. Played a lot like a marimba. You could play it at the same tempo as a marimba. Okay, so that's malleting, ringing, basic characteristics, and then levels. I wrote a little description here about how pieces are leveled in handbell choir. Handbell choir leveling is different from all other music notation. It's not ABRSM. It's not any other international leveling. It's handbell leveling. So level 1 was like quarter notes, half notes, diatonic stuff, mostly ringing, maybe 1 or 2 techniques. And then all the way up to level 5, you can have meter changes, really high tempi, a lot of bell changes, meaning I play something like this. Something like that. A lot of bell changes where I'm actually picking up and putting down a different bell. And then I wrote in also 16th note passages. You don't really see that until level 4. You don't see any 16th notes. And that's just kind of your general information for yourself. My suggestion is to write somewhere in the 3 to 4 range. The highest piece I've ever seen personally is a level 8, and it's so hard to play that I only got to hear it once, and I probably will only get to hear it once. It was a great piece. It was an arrangement of Dave Brubeck's Blue Rondo a la Turk. Da 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 da. Nowhere near that tempo. Da 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 da. So that even though it's written at that tempo, they can't do it. Just imagine me picking up these 2 bells, each weighing like 15 pounds. Da 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 da. No. Okay, so and then for like marketability, 3+ is a great level to write for. You can get a lot of people to play it. Okay, moving on. Handbell positions. So for a 5-octave ensemble, that usually means 13 players. Sometimes it can mean more if it gets more complicated. So 13 actual people are playing 2 bells at once, and some people play more than 2 bells at once. So in the top staff, the C of the treble clef, all the way up to the C, 2 octaves above that, up to C8. So this is C6 to C8. Often those players will be playing 4 bells or 4 diatonic pitches, C6 and C7, and D6 and D7. They'll also be playing C sharp and D sharp if you wrote in D sharps. But because we don't have duplicates for enharmonics, D sharp and E flat are one single bell. So if you write a D sharp and then immediately an E flat, the E flat player might be looking at that note and the D sharp player might not see it. I'm getting a little far afield here, but that's something to think about. Is the white keys are definitely like, if I'm C and D, I get C and D, no one else plays C and D. But C flat and D sharp might be played by someone else. Okay? So that's
Charles,
the treble clef.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
That's okay, please ask.
Could you please go a little slower?
Oh,
I feel
absolutely.
like, I don't know about the others, but it's my first time writing for handbells.
Oh,
a little
cool.
slower so we can kind of think about what you're saying. I mean, for you, you know everything, but we know nothing. So.
Oh,
at
yeah,
least I
no,
don't.
thank you. Thank you. That's
Because
really helpful.
and then I was a little curious because you said they have diatonic notes, but what about the chromatic notes up at the top?
Sure. Yeah, so let's just take the C and D6 player, for example. Whoops. Okay. So in my hands, I have a C6, which is right in the middle of the treble clef, and then the D6. And as a player, I'm considered the C6, D6 player. These are my 2 notes. If I need to play a C sharp, I have that bell right here, and it's labeled C sharp / D flat. So that means I'm actually the only person who's ever going to play this note too, because it's right in between my 2 notes. Where it comes into question is on the outer extremities. So D sharp is also E flat. So and I'm sorry, you probably can't see this, but, or maybe if you want to zoom in, Bill, on the bell the bell handle here. Or maybe it's zoomed in all the way. Oh, you're now pointing at, oh.
Okay. I hit a funny button.
Okay,
Yep.
okay, I'll take care of it.
Thanks.
That's okay.
Sorry about that, guys.
Oh, no, okay,
I don't want to make you dizzy.
we're getting the whole room, sorry. All right. Yeah, okay, this is the closest this camera will zoom into. But right here on the casting is written D sharp / E flat. So then if you write something for me, let's say it goes C, D, D sharp. Or C, D, E flat would be how we would spell it because it's like a C minor scale. That's how I would play it. Okay, but when it comes into question is if it's a D sharp. So maybe we're in some sort of, I don't know when this would ever come up.
Synthetic mode or something.
Yeah, something you're just coming up with. Or you just want to make sure that, like, maybe my part is more complicated. Maybe I need to play C, D, C sharp. And then I don't have enough hands to play the D sharp. Maybe you write it as an E flat, so the E flat player plays the E flat. This is getting really into the weeds right now. This is, but it's important stuff. Does that kind of answer your question, Andrew? Yeah? Okay, cool. So yeah, we all get 2 white keys. The exception being the bass players. The bass players have a more difficult job in that they have to coordinate as 2 people to play an entire octave of bells. So one player will typically play the lowest C, C3, up to E3, so splitting the octave, and then the F3 is going to be shared between the 2 players. And it's shared in the sense that if you write something for me that goes C, D, E, and these are heavy bells, right? C, D, E, and then there's an F right after, I'm going to say, okay, bass 2, you're going to play the F. So that the CDE person can do that, execute it successfully. And this is something the director might do, but you should think of it too. If you just write crazy scalar passages and like 16th notes in the bass clef, in bass bells, it's going to be nearly impossible to ring. However, like I said with malleting, it's like as fast as you want to write for marimba, we can play as fast on the bells too. And we lay it out like a piano, so we'll do C, D, E, and then in front of that, C sharp and D sharp, and we can just play it like a little keyboard, like a timbral staff notation that a percussionist might read.
I have a notation clarification question.
Okay.
So it is possible that the individual players may be switching a bell here or there during the performance.
Yeah.
Is it the composer's job to write that at all?
Great question. So if you didn't hear Bill's question, he asked if the composer needs to write instructions for bell changes. Mm-hmm. Is that basically it?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So like if you write something C, C sharp, D for me, then no, you don't write instructions.
Okay.
So this is a big difference between traditional composition, is like if you write a complex violin passage, you might write in fingerings, and you probably are going to write in string numbers if you have an idea of how you think it'll best be played. But with handbells, we have to figure it out.
Yeah, or even like writing for percussion. You know, you might say, take the ratchet now, or something like that.
Oh, okay, so like instrument changes like a percussionist would do. Right. Okay, so that's a great question. We have a notational system for all techniques. And if you're going to invent a technique, you have to give it a symbol. So if you have something like, other room. If you have something like pick up the mallet to play a malleted passage, I'm going to have to write that in.
So literally nothing, the composer just keeps it all in their head, essentially.
Yes.
And nothing, you don't see anything. And so that must be a similar rule of thumb when it comes to, for example, fast bass passages like you just discussed. It would be the director's say that they would be the ones communicating to the players. You play these three, you play this one.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And that's just for the base bells. Everybody else has their world.
Right.
Bass world is complicated.
Okay.
High treble world is complicated in a different way. The battery is very straightforward. They play their notes. They play the techniques that are written, and they don't ask a lot of questions.
Thank you.
Okay, cool. So now I'm going to move on to the next page here.
I'm sorry, I have another question.
Go
How
ahead.
many bass bells do you have?
Sure. So I have an octave, so C3 to B3, so 12 total bells.
And again, that's bell choir numbering, right?
That's bell choir numbering.
And
The
how many
C-
people play that octave?
Two
How
people.
many? So each one gets more or less six bells.
Yeah, if you're writing a lot of chromatic stuff, yes. They are in charge of 6 bells each, yes. With the middle bell being shared. So it's like I don't know, my math's not. C sharp, D sharp, E for one player, F sharp, G sharp, A, B flat, B, so 6 bells for the other player, and then F is shared. But I guess the F sharp is shared too, because the F it's like when you say F, you imply F sharp also. The player needs to be cognizant of what they're doing with any F labeled bell. Does that make sense?
Letter names.
Lettering,
Yeah.
yes. We're strong on letter names.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
Oh, that's a big piece of the puzzle. Letter names.
letter names.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to think about it. Like it's not pitch class. It's just letter names.
letter names.
It's white keys. We say. And actually, it's funny. One of the bell manufacturers makes the handles 2 different colors, white and black, to simulate a piano. So this is C, and this is D sharp. This is a black handle. This is a white handle. The other bell manufacturer doesn't do that. It's all black. Good luck. Okay. All right. Any other questions before I move on to basic technique?
I have a timbre question, but is that better saved for later?
Yeah,
Okay.
probably. Bill, behind the camera, is also learning how to write bells in this workshop, just so you're aware. Okay, basic technique. So ringing is a fluid motion. It starts with the bell casting pointed back. This is the casting, the metal part, pointed backward toward the bell player. And then the arm is brought forward, and then there's a wrist flick. And then the arm moves back into that position. So I'll show you that one more time. Arm goes forward, wrist flick, and then it comes back right to that position. Okay, so that's the basic technique. We have to do that every time we ring the bell. We have to think about that. With the bass bell, you can see it's just a much more exaggerated motion. Okay, and if I don't do anything to the bell, especially this one, we'll just keep going. I don't know, 30, 40 seconds, and it'll be audible. But to dampen it, a bass bell, I have to use my whole love handle right here. And players have to be aware of what they're wearing, because if you have any metal or any buttons, they will clink against the bell. So I have to use my entire body. And that's just because if I put a hand on it, or if I put it to my chest, listen, it's still going. And it brings out the harmonic. Yes, you can hear. I don't know if you can hear this on Zoom.
That is so cool.
Yeah, I think that's the second harmonic mostly. Okay, so bass bells are dampened like that. Every other bell is pretty much dampened right about here. On the other hand, high bells reverberate for just a few seconds. And then they're done. So again, ringing is that wrist flick motion, and then dampening happens on the body somewhere. And those are the two basic techniques. When we want something rung, we're going to see the letter R, or nothing at all. That's just like playing the flute. You don't write breathe. You know, it's that fundamental to us. For dampening, we're going to dampen whenever the duration of the note ends. So if it's a quarter note, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 3, 1, 3. That's how we'll dampen if that's what you've written. If you've written half notes, 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
If it's two consecutive half notes, you dampen in between?
No.
Okay.
Great question. If it's two consecutive half notes, you don't tip, or quarter notes like 1, 2, 3, 4. Unless you want something different, you would need to write eighth rest, eighth rest, eighth rest, eighth rest.
That's cool too.
It is cool. It's got a lot of extra sounds to it, though.
I imagine consecutive notes can perhaps create a maximally overpowering texture.
You get a big wash of sound if everybody is LV, laissez vibrer, and they're just not dampening at all. You get a big sound. Yeah, it can sound really cool. All right, advanced techniques. So now I'm going to look at this flow chart. This infographic, and go through each technique. And if you want to look at it, it's in the Dropbox. They all have specific symbols. Before I do that, any questions at the moment? All right. So the first one is ring. Like I said, is just the letter R. LV is let vibrate. And LV is canceled out by an R. So you write an LV at the start of a measure. We will LV until we see the letter R. Typically, composers do it for 2 beats or a measure, or if they want some effect, they might do it 8 bars or something. You could also write LV to measure number or whatever, just like you might see in a regular piece of music. HB handbells, HC hand chimes, that doesn't come up. Oh, I need to talk about hand chimes. I'll do that in a second. Remind me to talk about hand chimes. Chime notation has its own note head. It's a diamond-shaped note head with a stem. That's available in any software. But some of these other symbols you might have to make. I know Sibelius has them, but I don't know about Finale and Dorico. Martellato. This one's really fun. So you take the casting of the bell, again, the metal part, and you just slam it into the table without a piece of paper. Okay, so it's very percussive. If you can't hear that, let me know. Okay, so that's a battery bell. That's a B flat 4. And here's how it sounds with treble bells. And then with really high treble bells, very powerful sound. Bass bells, this technique is not used. And the reason why is because it can actually break the handle of the bell, the handle being this part right here. So instead, if a bell arranger has ever written a martellato symbol, which is that triangle pointed downward, for bass bells, we will adjust accordingly. And usually it involves something called pluck, which is farther down the list. This is pluck. It's like the opposite of like a plucking motion. It's more of a throw. You take the clapper head. Let me make sure you can see this. Take the clapper head, lift it up, throw it down. You could do that on all the bells. I need to get this paper out here. Becomes really difficult on the high bells. And then, I don't know. I wouldn't do it. Some of these techniques sound basically the same as a mallet. Where's my high bell mallet? Here it is. Like, if you can hear the difference, I don't know. It's much easier to mallet. Okay. That's martellato. Okay, along the lines of martellato is martellato lift, or mart lift. This is where you perform the mart and then you lift the bell up. And you can dampen it either on the table. Most players, if you write a bunch of martellato lifts in a row, they'll put it back in the table rather than on their body. Mart lift, great technique. Muted martellato is you take your hand and you put it on the casting, go like that. It's almost unpitched. It's much less pitched, at least. You just get a small semblance of it. You could do that with pluck also.
Ooh.
Kind of sounds like a thud, right? So this is regular martellato, and then this is muted martellato. My hands are on the casting. Other door.
Other door.
Other door. All right, cool. And then pluck, I described pluck. Then there's also pluck lift. Not as intense sounding as martellato lift. You can hear that keeps ringing, even on the table. Okay, that's pluck lift. Moving on to damping, there's the damp sign. It's the same as what's used in harp. So it's the two circles with a plus. Damp just means if you were LVing, and then you see the damp sign, it's damp. Sometimes you can LV over rests. You know, if you have like different voices and everybody's LVing, but you have a rest, and you really want to clarify, I want all the sound to stop right here. Damp sign. Brush damp. This is where you ring the bell against a piece of, you ring the bell and then you brush it against a piece of clothing, but you don't fully damp it. Like that. So you bring the dynamic down 50%, but it keeps going. Rim brush, I've never seen this before. And we have another handbell notation chart in this room. I don't know if I should point the camera at it, but there's a handbell notation chart right there. And it's got even more techniques on it. I swear to God, these people are inventing new techniques with every piece of music. So you should too. Rim brush, ring normally on beat 1, hold horizontally over table on beat 2, then lay bell on table and pull toward you on beat 3. That's really complicated. Let's try it. Here we go. Ring normally on beat 1, 1, 2, 3. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Ring touch is like this, kind of like what I was describing with eighth rest, eighth rest, eighth rest, eighth rest. Okay, thumb damp is where you place a thumb, or in some cases your entire hand, on the bell, and you can hear almost only harmonics, a little thud. On C8, sounds like a woodblock almost. And then with a bass bell, you need to use your whole hand. Oh, be careful. That is ring touch, thumb damp, or hand damp in the case of bass bells. And then table damp, they put a downward arrow. Don't use that. Don't do a downward arrow for table damp. No one knows what that means. All right, other special techniques. Mallet roll, you could do it on a suspended bell. That means the bell is held upside down. Okay, you can also do it on the table. The big difference is that it's a plus symbol underneath the note head if it's in the air, and it's a plus symbol with a staccato marking if it's on the table. And you have to do it for every single note. You can't, well, unless everybody's doing it for like the whole piece, you could just say mallet everything and we'll know what to do. You don't have to waste time. But if it's like a small passage, every note needs to have the symbol.
Do you mind if I ask you a question? Sorry.
Yeah, please.
Can all of the bells do suspended mallet roll?
Great question. Let's try it. I've never seen this in a piece, the suspended mallet roll, but I think it's a winning technique. We should probably try. I don't even know. Look at these. I'm not a percussionist. I don't know. You could just.
Is it better for higher ones or easier?
Yeah, I would say higher ones are easier.
That's good though, if you don't need the tremolo to be too fast.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask that too.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, because if I were a percussionist, I'd probably have two mallets and I'd be doing this kind of thing, but I can't really do that with these.
In theory, you could make like almost a reverse attack. You could start out really soft, build the roll, and then ring the bell.
Yeah, good luck writing that. I don't know how you would write that, but so typically we do suspended mallet upside down. There's really no reason for this. You could do suspended mallet like this.
Oh.
So if you wanted to do that,
Cool.
I would just write an R, actually. I would do that tremolando symbol with the mallet symbol, and then if it's going to like a big hit, like an R. But it's going to be tough for me to, so look, R for ring. So look at how much it takes to get the bell to ring.
It's hard to get it seamless.
Right.
Unless you're like, oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, okay.
That looks cool too.
It looks cool. I could practice that. I would have to practice that. But you see there's a lot of preparation. Now with a high bell, I could do that right. I could do it right from there because it's so light.
Yeah.
Okay, swing. Think of your.
That's one way to pitch bend. The
That
Doppler
is-
effect.
It's a little Doppler effect. Yep. So think of your Santa Claus outside of Goodwill. That's what it. And when the whole choir's doing it, it's very visually interesting too, especially if you have them alternated. There's a piece I linked in the Dropbox called Lumiere. It starts with everybody doing a swing technique. They'll go like this, and then everybody does it, and then they do the next hand, and then they go like this.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so cool.
It's intense. Okay, singing bell. Let me get that down. Singing bell is just like a Tibetan singing bell. You just write SB, and if you write a whole note tied to a whole note, we'll do it for the whole whatever. It gets progressively more difficult on the lower bells. It's really hard to do on the C3.
Because you can only touch the bells with material softer than the bell itself is.
Yeah. Yeah, you could barely hear it. Let me see if I can get the F going. Once it goes, it's not speaking for me today. Okay, but on a higher bell, yeah, it's super effective on C4 up to, I would say, G4 maybe B4, maybe that, sorry, C4 up to B5, sorry, in that space, the battery. Really, really effective. It's just harder with the larger and the smaller bells. Okay, that's singing bell, SB, shake. Works great on high bells. The lower you get, the more effort it takes. And some of them, the mechanism will just not ring back fast enough to allow it. But you can see I'm putting in a ton of effort. Impossible on the bass bells. That's shake. Bell tree, if we get a piece that you've
Sorry.
written. Yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
I may not, we live in different cities, so maybe other people. When you were really good about giving us a range for the singing bell, what works the best, what would you say for shaking? How far, what would be the cutoff for the low note?
I would say realistically G4 would be the lowest note. And then all the way up to C8. It's so easy on the high bells.
Thank you.
Here's an F4. You just risk getting some gaps. Like it'll sound like I've got bad technique because it's just too hard. Yeah, please stop me and interrupt if you have range questions. I should be better about that.
I have one more, just to let
Yeah.
you know. The handout that you gave us said that the bells sound an octave higher than written. Not that handout, but in that guide that was that you guys asked us to download. That
Was it the one? I think it was from the UK.
Oh, probably.
That's incorrect. That's
okay.
Ignore that.
So the difference in C4 in the numbering is in name only.
Name only.
Yeah.
Middle C on the bells is middle C on the piano. Okay. Bell tree. This is where you can have bells interlaced. Hold on, I need to think about it. This.
Whoa.
You could do this farther too. This is just 4 bells. But bell tree. It's kind of hard to work with. If you need suspended bells, and played in rapid succession, bell tree. But then you have to think about how do the players. It took me a few seconds to get this together, so you have to think about the timing for that. Here's something I'll tell you right now that you might want to write down. We have 2 sets of the octaves C4 to C7. So that means I can set up these 4 bells in a bell tree on a stand and leave them there. And then I can have these same bells. This is G6, for example. I can have these ready to go to ring because I have a second set of bells. So you could do bell tree in the same piece without having to do too many, or wait too long or something like that. All right. Trill, moving on, trill is trill. But I would probably, I've never seen trill. But, if you write it, you just have to think, who's playing those 2 notes? So if it's G6 and A6, if you could consult your handbell positions chart, that's one human being. They could do that, no problem. But as soon as you write F6 and G6, now I have to talk to my person on my left and say, hey, I need that F6 bell so I can take it from you and do a trill. That's why you need to know who's playing what bells. Okay, and then vibrato is a great technique. You just take a finger or a hand and you simulate vibrato. On a bigger bell, it makes more. biggest bell.
It's really effective the lower you go.
Yeah. And you might hear a lot of hand noise from the microphone, but from the audience, it translates great. That's vibrato, you just write vib. Gyro. This is gyro.
The big ones are really effective live. I don't know how effective it would be over a microphone,
Yeah, the farther back you go. Okay, and then one of my favorite techniques is echo. You need to have space to do this. Echo. And from afar, it's again better. As soon as this casting tips down, the sound goes down because the sound comes right off the lip of the casting, which is why when we finish a note, we want the casting to be parallel to the ground or perpendicular, depending on how you think about it. You don't want to do this. So if you're in the room, you can hear this. That's like a mezzo forte or forte. It's way softer, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's how the echo is effective. Is you change that volume graph goes like this.
That's cool.
Yeah. High bells, it goes away almost immediately. It really diminishes. Battery bells. Oops. That extra sound you heard was the clapper head coming back and striking again because the bell was being moved like that. That's an adjustment that I need to make on the bell. It shouldn't do that. But so you're aware, it's either a technique issue or it's an adjustment, physical adjustment issue. Okay, and then controlled diminuendo. This is kind of what you were visualizing, Bill, but this is...
That's cool.
Something like that. Another one I like is if you do, especially if you do suspended mallet.
That's cool.
You hear that harmonic really
Yeah.
prominent? I can hear it from here at least.
This is the second part, the third part.
Okay. That's everything in this chart.
Interesting overtones.
Yeah. Oh, mallet lift. That's not on the big infographic. It's the same as pluck lift and martellato lift. You write a... Go a little... oh, wait. Oh, yeah.
That's from
we already...
earlier, sorry.
That's okay.
I didn't see that in the chat.
That's okay.
Sorry, Andrew, I just saw your request that you sent at 12:11. I thought I would have been able to see it.
Yeah, how are we doing on time here? 12:46, wow. All right. Mallet lift sounds like this. Depending on how hard you hit it. Okay. That's all the advanced techniques so far. In one of the pieces called Soundscapes, the composer Matthew Compton uses water bells, which is maybe the only example of that technique. It's just like a water gong. You can strike the casting in the water, or you can hit it first and then put it in water. And I didn't bring any water. I probably should have, but you should look at that piece. It's toward the end of the piece. They do water gong, and they do it with two bells. They go like this. They hit the G6 and the G7, I think, but they start in the water, so it goes like boing, 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 boing. It sounds like that. It sounds very otherworldly. Okay.
I'm the only one who's asking questions. How do you feel about dipping your bells in water in
As
general?
long as I get time to dry them off afterwards. That's a great question.
And how many people could be doing it possibly? You'd have to have everybody have to have their own bucket or something.
Yeah, everyone would have to have their own bucket.
So there's
Would
probably
you,
a point where it becomes impractical.
Yeah, they do it in little buckets. It's like a little Tupperware, kind of like this. It's not like a water gong apparatus where there's like, if you've ever seen them, they have like a winch and a rope, and there's two people doing it. You might, well, I don't know. I'm curious to know what it would sound like with a bass bell. I bet I could do it by myself with the water, but I'd need a sizable bucket.
I wonder if it would get splashy, like you would hear splashes from the.
We'd have to practice to not get splashes, I think, because you probably don't want splash
From the
sounds.
vibrations, I mean, like,
Oh, from the vibrations. Yeah.
interesting.
and after the bell is wet, does it make it, if the piece keeps going, does that make any difference in the way it plays or anything?
If I'm thinking about the piece that I linked, I think those bells, I think he used a second set for the water bells. Like I was describing, identical pitches, identical bells, but a second set. So they actually walked over to a different table with the water bells set up. And then they went back to their other position. Yeah, so that's a great question. I don't know. I bet they would dry off pretty quick. I mean, it's metal, and we're just, if anything, I suppose it would lower the pitch marginally, right? Because it adds weight. I don't know. I don't see it raising the pitch, at least. Yeah, I could try it out. You know, we're doing this again in 2 weeks, Andrew, and so I'll come prepared with some water, because I would like to know too. It would sound cool, maybe. That's water gong, water mallet, water bells. I forgot how he notates that, but I think he has its own staff. He does like an OCS staff, and he says water bells, and then he puts, I don't know. I don't know what to do. Come up with something that you think is logical. Maybe an X note head, something different. Advanced techniques. Okay, so now more than two bells. So in standard positions, like I was describing, the player has two note names. I've got G4 and A4 right here. These bells are so large that I can't play four at the same time. But with smaller bells, I can. So with G6, A6, so that was G4, A4, this is G6, A6, I have two options, and they're in the document here. There's four in hand, and that's kind of a misnomer. It's four in two hands, but I could play them like this. So how I have it laid out is one handle is facing forward if I do what's called a knock. This is called knock, like knocking on a door. And then the other handle is facing forward in a ring position, so my wrist is like this. So then I could play really fast scale stuff. Okay, I could play fast stuff with four in hand. The other thing you could do with high bells is you could do something called Shelley. And that's when you play only two note names. In this case, I'm going to do G6 and A6. And I hold in both hands two bells. In this hand, I have G6 and G7. So I have an octave. And they're both facing the same direction. So when I ring, they both ring at once. If I turn my wrist, they won't ring. In the other hand, I have A6. So then it's great for playing a little melody. You can have players from C6 up to C8 doing this. So then you can have an octave melody that goes all the way up to C8 and all the way down to C6. If you've written me something kind of complicated and it goes G6, A6, and then you want two octaves, and then you want to go back, that's how I would do it. I would pick up the bells, ring them, and then drop them. Just like that. This is just how the technique works. You don't have to write this in. This is really important. You don't need to write four in hand or Shelley. but you should know what the player has to do in order to achieve it.
I have another question if you don't mind.
Yep.
So starting at C6, is that where it's those are the players that have the possibility to play 2 notes in each hand?
Yes.
So that's that last C6 to C6 to C8.
That's right. Yeah. So some people, maybe with bigger hands, could do lower bells, and they might just out of necessity. So I have, these are the first 5s we're looking at. I have F5 and G5. I've got a pretty big hand. I can reach like an 11th on the piano. That's pretty comfortable. I could do that all day. But if you know, just to make you aware, bell players are mostly ladies. And unless they play bass bells, they're ladies and they have smaller hands, so they can't do that. So I would say safely, Shelley 4 in hand works for C6 up.
And I just wanted to ask you, so if they're each playing, if they each have 2, that means they have potential to play 4 pitches.
Yes.
But in general, unless I'm reading this wrong, how do they know, like what if you're taking somebody else's pitches, like when they read it on the staff, how do they know that, oh, now I have 4 notes instead of before I had 2 notes?
Sure. So if I saw a passage that said G, G sharp, A sharp, I would know those are all 4 of my bells. And I would just, through practice, be ready to pick up those pitches and ring them in whatever order you have, and then put them down and go back to G6, A6, whatever it is the piece demands. But the important sticking point is if you write a G flat, that's not my actual bell. That's the F sharp player's bell. I guess they really work upwards, right? So C and D, C sharp and D sharp. Well, no, the E flat is really common. I think that, the thing is with most bell music, we only get so far around the circle of fifths. So if you'll see a lot of E flats and A flats, but not a lot of D flats. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm probably going too far afield, but you'll very rarely see a G flat. And if you do, then you are thinking in hopefully D flat or G flat major, or C flat major. Okay, so if you have too many big bells you need to play, we do something called weaving. Again, you don't write this, you don't need to tell the player to do this. They will just have to do it themselves. So in the same example, but down 2 octaves, G4, G sharp 4, A4, A sharp 4. This is how you weave. That's how weaving happens. So I table damped. You don't have to tell me to table damp. If you write something like what I just played, G, G sharp, A sharp, A sharp, A, G sharp, G, I will play it like that, and I will table damp. You don't really get to tell me what to do there. I'm not going to do this. I can't body damp. It's too risky, so I just table damp. Sorry. Okay, the same thing happens with bass bells, but it takes more time. Do you guys want me to set that up so you can see it, or are you good? I'll just move on. That's weaving. Okay, great. Now on to notation. Hopefully you've looked at some bell music. Yes? Yes, excellent. So you may have noticed that it's all written on the grand staff. Every player sees what every other player is doing. The conductor reads off the same score that the players read off of. There are no parts. So as a composer, it's great. There's no part extraction. We just write a full score and they figure it out. But on the opposite side of the conversation, we have to figure out how the hell do we line it up so that we have 5 octaves of music represented on one grand staff so that they can read their individual notes and maybe spy the melody. once in a while so they know where they are in the piece. So the way we do that is with voice directions, so stem directions. Typically, it's just two stem directions in one staff, but I've seen a lot of music where it goes to 3 and sometimes even 4. And that's where you have maybe in the treble clef, you have a little bit of a harmony passage at the bottom on D and E of the treble clef. And then in the middle, you have some bells playing some other maybe arpeggiated rhythmic thing, and then a melody on top of that. And then you have 2 stems that are both going up, but then they're to the side of each other. It looks kind of nasty, but the players just have to remember, I've got 4 beats in a bar or whatever it is, and no matter what, I'm looking at my 4 beats. If there's a rest, it's my rest. Okay, you get it.
So are you saying there's one stem direction for each player?
No,
Okay.
no.
Sorry.
There's not one well, if you run into the situation where you have in the treble clef, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 players. If you run into, if you need 7 people to do 7 different things, that's okay. You need to write 2 grand staffs or 2 ossia staffs above that treble clef, and then tell those players where they're playing. That's what I would do if I were a composer.
So the multiple stem directions, that's essentially for clarity.
Yeah.
That's just so that they can read it and understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Better. Okay.
Yeah. For like really, I wrote in here on handbell dues later in the document, but I said if you're writing a lot of vertical stuff, everybody's playing the same at the same time rhythmically. One stem is probably not ideal. You probably want to split it so that you have 2 stems, and that's so the technique is replicated at the top and the bottom. And this is why. If you're the D and E player, right at the bottom of the treble clef, and the technique symbol for martellato is at the top on C8, I'm not looking there, right? It's visually, it's 1.5 inches above where I'm looking. So then we'll just waste rehearsal time, and I'll be like, hey, you guys, you're martellato, you're doing this. But they're like, oh, the symbol is like on the next page for me, right? So then you replicate the symbol on both the top and the bottom, and stem direction fixes that. You put the 2 stems, and then if you have it like a staccato mark, they both get a staccato mark. Interestingly, the staccato mark doesn't mean staccato. It means mallet on the table. That's like a shorthand way of doing it. The full technical way is a plus with a staccato. But then the tenuto symbol and the accent symbols or articulation symbols are both fair game. You can put those in the piece. That's not a technique thing. We will try to interpret that like a classical musician would interpret those articulations. Okay, so I put page size 8.5 by 11. Nowadays, my players really like it if I blow it up. So this is actually 10 by 14, but I do that here at the church. I print it out on 11 by 17 and I cut it down. And they love this stuff because some of the music for them is 3 or 4 feet away. And so it's just a little larger than orchestral part size, or a little different, I guess. Staff size, really important that it's really big staff size. I put 0.32 inches here or 8.1 millimeters. That's larger than your standard piano score or anything like that. Bar numbers, every bar gets a number every single bar. And then I wrote again about ensemble octaves. I highly suggest you just write specifically for 5 octaves. Some people will write 3 to 5 octaves, and then they'll have these notes in parentheses. If you're writing handbells for the first time, stick with 5 octaves and just say it's for 5 octave handbells. The different ranges of octaves are to make the piece more marketable so that smaller groups can play it. Bill?
And what's your recommendation for putting it with cello? Do you suggest just a normal size cello staff that's the same size as the grand staff for everyone? Or do you suggest like small cello staff for the handbell players to read off of?
That's a great question. We're playing a piece with flute and handbells, and they're all the same staff size, and the flute is just at the top. Yeah.
Maybe cello's at the bottom because it's a bass instrument?
You could do that, or just because it's a solo, it's a solo instrument, so I would, yeah. No, that's okay. But in an orchestral score, it's below the piano. Right.
Right.
So, but I would suggest put the cello staff on top. If you're running into something like what I'm theorizing, if you say you want every single player to do something totally different and you need multiple staffs, maybe just put the cello staff on its own page, make a part, call it cello part, and the conductor will just have to be like, this is where the cello plays, this is where they don't play. We'll just mark it in. Andrew, did you have a question?
Are page turns often a problem?
Yes.
Because the notations are the notes are so big and everything. And how do people deal with page turn? Or what do you recommend how to deal with it?
Yeah, so we deal with that on our end. I would love it for you to be conscious of that. But the nice thing is that because it's one instrument, but there's a lot of independence, the bass bells might not play the same measure that the treble clef has this big passage. So then what I do is I print all the music single-sided and I hole punch both sides. The bass bells will turn a page early than the treble bells, for example. That's how I solve it. If I don't see a good way for a page turn, we might tape a third page there. Something like that. We'll make it work. Yeah, good question.
Hopefully in the 3 to 5 minute piece, there won't be a ton of page turns.
Yeah, depending on the tempo though.
Right.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
had one other question too. I'm
Yep.
sorry. You had said something. It said it's 3 to 5 minutes, right?
Yes.
The piece.
Yes.
In your opinion, just to have a marketable piece, what's the optimal time for? I guess it depends how hard the piece is.
I would say 3. Yeah, 3 is a great in terms of marketability, like pop song length. Yeah. The majority of music written for handbells is written for church. So if you want to make something marketable, use a hymn tune or write a title that sounds kind of like it could fit in a church setting. Like we're playing a piece that's called Spirit Song. It actually has lyrics that are Christian, but Spirit Song kind of can go either way. Another piece I gave you to link in the Dropbox is called Vision Quest. I might program Vision Quest in the church. It's spiritual in nature, but it's not strictly Christian. So, you could put I've programmed a piece called Prelude, like as long as it's not offensive, I guess. I don't know. How could handbell music be offensive?
So not Hell's Bells.
Hell's Bells, right. I wouldn't program Hell's Bells. Or a pop song, right? If it's like, Call Me Maybe. I'm not going to play that in church, probably. I don't see how I'm going to make that work and still have a job at the end of the day.
You did say in the call that you were trying to look for some pieces that were a little more thinking outside the box.
Yes.
Which could possibly mean a lot of things.
Yeah, sure. I think it's nice to think about the piece being marketable. As composers, we want it played a second time, maybe. But thinking outside the box is definitely where we want to go. This is not going to be played in a church service. This is a separate concert, just happens to be in a church. So please write something. You're welcome to write something churchy. It can be Hindu, it can be Buddhist, it can be Christian, it can be atonal, sacred, secular. It doesn't matter. Think outside the box. Yeah. Let's see. Those were great questions. And we're almost done here. So I went over voices. This is on the 3rd page of the outline. If 3 or more voices are needed, consider splitting the grand staff with an additional treble or bass staff. And then handbell don'ts. This isn't a super comprehensive list, but the first one is clinking. You might be compelled to write something out of the box, a technique that's never been done before, but don't ever ask us to knock 2 castings together. It'll damage them. It starts putting little pits in them, especially if it's on the rim. I actually see some pitting on here, and it just starts to degrade the tone of the bell. So that's called clinking. It's usually an accidental thing when in practice you put your bell on top of another bell by accident. And then the other big don't is, I don't care how you write it, C5, middle C, is always a bass clef note. C sharp 5 is also a bass clef note. D flat 5 is a treble clef note. This is really important because the D flat player only reads the bottom of the treble clef. They're not looking that far down. They consider them a flute player that's never read a bass clef piece in their life. And then the C5 player is a cello player that never plays in the treble clef. Well, but they do play in the treble clef. What's a bass? The double bass. A double bassist never plays in the treble clef. So they're not looking, they don't know how to read it. Just don't write a C5 in the treble clef. And then handbell dues, I talk about splitting voices, and then giving bass bells their own stem direction at all times, I think is really successful. They know where to look. It helps visually for everybody. And then talking about vertically oriented chords, where to split the voices. I put B5, C6 as a great place to split, right in the middle of the treble staff. And then, yeah, okay. Any questions? Anything you want me to try right now? I got bells, I got mallets.
I have questions, but I want them to go first if they have questions.
Okay, Bill wants you guys to go first if you have
You had
questions.
said something else about the chimes. Is there chimes too?
Thanks. Yes.
Didn't expect the closet.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff. It's all right. Okay, so these are called choir chimes. They're like big tuning forks.
Whoa.
So this is G4 and G6, and we actually go all the way up to D7 because I bought it.
Do the choir chimes have the same octave numbering situation as the handbells?
100%, yes.
Okay.
This is the highest chime we own. It's a D7. Sorry. Very powerful. These have one way to be played. That's it. Rung. We've tried this, but it just kind of sounds like a thud. That's what I'd call a martellato, chime martellato. Try it if you want to. You can also do vibrato. And then you notice the way I damp is different because it's got two tines here. I have to damp both tines. If I go like this, it might still keep ringing on the forward tine. I don't know, sometimes. Okay, those are chimes.
I have a question about it. I'm sorry.
The waving it back and forth. Oh, that's the dampening sound.
The dampening sound.
Upper register change. Yeah, okay. Cool.
It actually sounds like a little dip.
Yeah, it's cool. It's also like a Foreman effect.
Mm-hmm. Andrew, question?
Could you repeat again? What's the register and how many people play these? How many do you?
Great.
Out of the 13, who's playing these?
Yes, great question. The G4, G4, A4 player is in charge of the G4 and A4 chimes. So that's one human. And we have C4 up to D7. But we don't have a C-sharp 7. It's a little weird. But we have a C7, but not and a D7, but not a C-sharp 7. If you want a C-sharp 7, just let me know. It's like $50. I'll order it. But and you can buy them separately real easily. So this is what a chime player, a bell player who has a passage that goes G-A handbells and then G-A chimes. They have to go like this. Now I'm not only just playing G-A and A-flat and maybe A-sharp, but now I'm playing G-A, A-flat, A-sharp, G-chime, G-sharp chime, A-chime, maybe A-sharp chime. So it could be 8 things I have to think about. Chimes are optional. If you want them in a piece, I think they're great. They can add a really nice characteristic. As far as orchestration goes, if you have a high bell and a lower chime at the same time, didn't I just have a G5? Yeah. So I've got a G6 chime and a G5 bell. And I could do the opposite. G6 bell and a G5 chime. Almost starts to sound like Willy Wonka. So you can have a melody that's doubled in chimes. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. It sounds good. Let's talk about doubling real quick. There's two ways to notate what we call doubling, which is playing the 6 and the 7, the G6 and the G7. There's two ways. You just write the notes. So you just write all the ledger lines, and you write a G on top of the staff, and then a G7 on top, and we just get used to reading that. Or you can write something that says doubling, and it looks like an octava symbol, but it's not an ottava symbol. We never use that. You write the symbol, and then we know every highest note is doubled. So let me say that again. Every highest note represented on the staff is doubled. Not every note in the staff, but every highest note or every upstem often is the case. Both things can be true. I would highly recommend just writing the ledger lines. Write in all the ledger lines, write in all the notes. You might have 2 grand staffs per page at that point. If you have full C3 to C8, full 5 octaves with all the ledger lines, it might take up two staffs on one page. Usually it's 3 to 4 staffs on a page, but yeah. Okay, questions? More questions?
Daniel's raising his hand.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried bowing the bells?
Yeah, I wanted to try that. Yes, maybe I'll try that in 2 weeks. I'll get a bass bow. Yeah.
That'll be great with the cello, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, shoot.
Yes.
Can you describe the sound? Do you know the sound?
I've never seen it done.
Okay.
So that would get rosin on the casting. I'll talk to some bell people and see if they're okay with that. But, I don't know. You should be okay with some. I mean, it's removable.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that would be awesome. Yeah. Great question, Daniel.
That's cool. Do you have any questions, buddy? No? I was going to jump in with a couple questions unless you guys wanted to ask any more.
Can you hear Bill okay? Yeah,
Just trying
okay,
to
great.
talk
I
with
won't
a loud
repeat your
voice.
questions then. Go ahead, yeah.
That's why I was asking my questions so loudly. Okay, I was just wondering, so I know like on a vibraphone, you can create a glissando effect by simply placing your finger and sliding it up the bar. Now, the bar is a much simpler mechanism, like it's a lot simpler shape and everything than the bell, but I was wondering if you're malleting it and you slide your finger slowly, if it would do anything, or what it sounds
Okay.
like.
So I would have to, why don't you hold the bell for me?
Okay. You could do it on the table. Does nothing.
Does nothing.
That's what I wanted to know, if it did anything.
Yeah.
If this was a vibraphone, it would be different.
It would be. This is
Yeah.
vibraphone material, but you can't mallet it.
You can't mallet it.
Yeah.
And there's no way to. No. Yeah. So I don't know. What I'm trying to think of is oh, I'm not even in the. What I'm trying to think of is any way that you can do a glissando besides the Doppler effect and the water effect. And if not, that's okay. But
Yeah. I don't think you could do a glissando other than those two things.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Especially not controlled.
Right.
Yeah.
Or any kind of pitch bend. But okay, what about a really fast swing, like a single swing? I was wondering like how powerful the effect is.
Do you mean ring back and then swing up?
Yeah.
Okay, I've never seen that before.
And what's the fastest you can do it? The faster is the more powerful. Okay, so it's short, but you kind of hear there's like a small pitch bend. That's
Yeah.
kind of cool.
Sorry. I'm not used to ringing behind me.
It's okay. Ah,
I don't think it would. I don't know.
it's kind of hard.
Yeah, it's
What
like,
about swinging like this from forward?
oh, that's what we do all the time.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
mean, faster?
Okay. So that is like a little pitch bend actually. That is a little bit. It's kind of like I'm picturing this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Okay.
Consider the strength of the player, though.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I have one more question that's a general question about, that goes way back to the beginning about the division of the bells amongst the players. So first of all, as a general principle, the faster the notes are moving, the more the composer has to have a clear idea for who's playing what bells.
Yes.
And who is in charge of what bells.
Yes.
Okay. And so, is it simply divided? Is it like a standard division? Like each time it's pretty much the same division of bells across the players, unless there's a special thing they need to do.
Yes.
Okay. And that standard is one player gets C and D, and C sharp and D sharp. The next player gets E flat, E, F, F sharp, and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, just making sure that I understand.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. And then you really have to know what you're doing as a composer if you're going to write a passage that requires something else.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If you're going to, you just need to know who's playing what.
Sorry, other door.
If you need to know who's playing what. Yeah.
Right. Because I'm picturing because I know that it's a lot easier to get good articulation if it's one person playing a difficult passage. The more people that are involved in a fast passage, the greater the risk that it's not going to be rhythmically together. Is
Yes.
that right?
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
That is a great point. So the bass bell takes a lot of preparation to ring. And a really experienced bass player will know exactly when that clapper is going to hit the casting, because that determines when the onset of the note is.
Mm-hmm.
The bass is hard for that. The treble bells are real easy because it takes a tiny, I could do it with a tiny motion. But yeah, Bill's point is that the bigger the bell and the fact that there are different sizes means you might get
Right.
by accident.
Well, and just the more people, like you and I discussed before, even if you give a bunch of people if you give each person a boom whacker,
Yeah.
so a really simple percussion instrument, and then you ask them to play a scale in eighth notes, the more people that are involved, the greater the chances that that's not going to be rhythmic.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say scalar passages are some of the most harebrained, most stressful things for players when it involves two or more people.
So how much would it mess with the handbell players, just because it's not what they're used to, if we were to write a piece and we were to develop some way of telling them, it's okay if this passage doesn't quite line up. It could be a little nebulous, but try to get eighth notes. But it's okay if it's not exact.
Yeah, you could write that as a performance note.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And
There's also pieces with approximate timing
okay.
where they just don't have bar lines, and then we just kind of figure it out.
That's right, because you and I were talking earlier, and there is a piece that we discussed that had aleatoric notation.
Yes.
Yeah, with just not random ringing. What's that technique called?
Well, we could call it random ringing. That's
Okay.
usually they'll just put straight up and down whole notes of whatever chord, and you just write random ringing. And then you put a line with an arrow, tell them when to end. 3 bars, 5 bars.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Cool.
Random ringing is a cool effect. If you have a lot of professionals doing it, it sounds really effective. With newbies, they tend to just revert to. But with pros, we're like listening and we're like, ha.
Cool.
Yeah. And I think you could also use visual notation cues like you might see in graphic scores. I've done it once where the random ringing, I want like a lot, and then very sporadic to nothing. Common trope in new music, you know.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
So
right.
you
Very
can
cool.
you could use graphic notation. as long as you can think through it.
I had one last question,
Okay.
which is you had the thumb notation, the thumb dampening. To me, that was the most dead sound, right? And didn't you even do it on wasn't there a technique where you do it on the, yeah. That's really interesting. That's damped, but it's not a super duper metallic clangy sound.
Yeah.
Is there a dry clangy sound that the bells can make or no?
Dry, clangy sound.
The easy way to do it would be to do a dead stroke with a piece of metal.
How about that?
Ooh. That's pretty cool.
I'm holding the mallet against the casting.
Can you try that on a bass one too?
Yeah, it's just their yarn mallets.
Oh,
so
you
it
have
might-
to use yarn on the bass ones?
Well, yeah, that's not going to physically be possible.
That was cool. That was cool.
Yeah, that's a good question about mallets. So every area of the choir has its own bell mallet, and they start with hard plastic, and they go down to yarn, and they're different sizes and densities. And that's just so that if everybody mallets at once, it sounds like one big chord from the same instrument.
Right.
Now I could take this and I can,
Oh, that's a good.
yeah,
Can you dead stroke it real quick? That's what I was.
that's what you
And does it matter if you play it up here or closer to the?
let's try it. So here's,
I always have 1,000.
that's right near the edge of the,
That's a
casting.
sound we haven't heard before.
yeah, it's kind of the same.
That's the same, only more high register.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That's actually really close to the sound I was picturing.
Oh, cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got one victory in there.
Okay, good.
Okay.
So I would say use, write some instruction like use plastic mallet. Yeah. And then we would just say, okay, give me your mallets.
I did have one more general question, which was,
Yeah.
two more. Okay, so how reliable are they with dynamics? Like if you ask for a super soft,
Sure.
it's pretty easy to have dynamic control, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, good. And so we should be able to count on that.
Yes.
Okay. And then, sorry, just going back to the division of notes. It's, so you start, so each player, they start on a natural note, a white note, and they get the next semitone, the next 4 semitones essentially, going up.
Yep.
That's right?
Yes.
1, 2, 3,
Yes.
4. That's
Yes.
all, and then that's all.
Yes.
Okay, that's a good, I was looking for a really easy rule of thumb.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. I think we're going to close it's been an hour and a half, so we're going to close the meeting down unless you have any other questions, Matt or Daniel, or Andrew's back. Andrew, you're good, Daniel. Andrew, we're about to close, and Yichi.
Thank you for everything.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank
It's
you.
really been great.
Yeah, this is just a fascinating world of like musical instruments that we don't normally get access to, so it's very cool.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that.
We're excited. We're really excited. We were so happy to see your submissions. They were fabulous.
Yeah, we're super excited. And one last thing, we are percussionists. So we do own small percussion instruments as well. Tambourine, shakers, claves, woodblocks. We have the mallets, woodblock mallet. This is basically a woodblock mallet. So those are options as well.
This might be a really far-reaching question. Have you ever used these on like the larger ones, especially on like snare drums to get the like sympathetic resonance from snares?
That's a cool idea. I have not.
Okay, that's something that I really like to do, so I was wondering if that might be a possibility.
I own 2 snare drums, so yeah, within reason, we could do something like that. The bowing question that Daniel had, that's something we'll need to purchase bows or borrow them maybe from some other cellists we know or something like that. But I'd be open to doing that. But like we could get 10 student bows from some poor middle school give them $200 or something. Yeah, we could do it. Any other questions?
Just lastly, I can't make the next meeting. Is it more or less going to be the same?
Yeah, I'll poll the other composers, and I'll probably go through the same thing, but I know Daniel wanted to hear bowing, and everybody I think wants to hear water bells, and then I'll bring in a snare drum. And if you want to email me with requests, I think that's what the next meeting will be. And I'll record it and send it out, Andrew.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I have to take off, but thank you so much.
Oh yeah, thank you. You're welcome.
Nice to meet you all. Look forward to seeing